Brian Schottenheimer, Brian Cornelius Schottenheimer is now the betting favorite to be the next head coach of my Dallas Cowboys and yours? Seriously? Where did this come from? Talk about a bolt out of the metallic blue. Knock me over with a metallic blue feather. Brian Schottenheimer, 51 years of age. All he's got going for him is that he has been in Dallas for the last 4 years as basically a consultant and a best buddy to Mike McCarthy. They connected for the first time when Brian worked for his father, Marty, and Mike was on that staff back in Kansas City, and they became best buds. And so Mike brought him along to Dallas first as a consultant, then as the offensive coordinator. Mike was the offensive coordinator, and he called the plays. He just wanted his buddy to be with him in Dallas. I assume Jerry likes his buddy, Brian. And I'm assuming that Jerry thinks that he can sell Brian Schottenheimer just because he's the son of a former very good coach. Not an all-time great coach, although he is in the Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame, Marty Schottenheimer. I'll get to him in just a moment. But the only sell on Brian at age 51 is his pedigree, his bloodlines to Marty. Because the harder I look at Brian Schottenheimer's resume, he's been coaching in the National Football League. He had 3 quick stops, 1-year stops, Syracuse, USC, Georgia in college football. But he's now been over 28 years of coaching on 13 different teams. 13 teams in 28 years, and he's never been a head coach? Why is that, Jerry Jones? Because nobody ever really considered him head coaching material. He was not a chip off the old block. He was not his father, or somebody would have given him a shot before now at age 51 after 28 years in and around the National Football League. What? By the way, Brian Schottenheimer was on 6 teams in his first 6 years of coaching. That's not a good sign. Something kept going afoul, amiss, going wrong. He had one sort of moment in the sun in Seattle where he had some success as the offensive coordinator with Russell Wilson at his peak, and then it all fell apart down the stretch of his last year there, and he parted ways with the organization over philosophical differences. I guess he fell apart with Russ or with Pete Carroll or with the defense, or it was all starting to unravel and fall apart in Seattle, and he was certainly a victim of that. And as far as head coaching goes, all I know about, all I can see on the resume, and I follow this very closely, way back in 2007, he was a rumored candidate when Saban left the Dolphins to go to Alabama, and nothing ever materialized. And then in 2010, he did get, I think it was his one and only interview until now, and that was with the Jets, who opted to go with Rex Ryan. That was a really good move. That was to replace my friend Eric Mangini, who was the then fired head coach of the New York Jets. What? That's it? You got one interview until now? And why now would he spring all the way to the top as the betting favorite? Well, that means somebody knows something. Jerry and Steven are leaking their usual trial balloon here. They're floating it with some media member, and they are officially going to interview him, and they want to see how it plays publicly because they are still very attuned to doing the right PR thing because they are super salesmen. And somebody knows something. Somebody is betting big amounts of money that is influencing the betting line that Brian Schottenheimer is now the odds-on favorite to be the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys? How? Why? Show me. Once again, I'd take Kellen Moore over Brian Schottenheimer. So here's what I know about Marty, and I've known a whole lot of coaches who coached for Marty. I did not know Marty personally, but Marty was a great guy. He was a dynamic leader as opposed to his son. And yet, Marty was a victim of what was called Marty Ball. You play defense, you run it, you basically play not to lose. So they had some really good regular seasons. His regular season record wound up being 200 wins, 126 losses, 1 tie. Pretty good. Postseason record, not so good for Marty Ball. 5-13. Though 3 times he got to the AFC Championship game and lost all 3 because he was the classic can't win the big one because he plays not to lose the big one. He doesn't play to go for the throat and win the big one. He doesn't go for it. He sits back and hopes that you make the mistake and his defense prevails over you with a key turnover and ball control. He was coach of the year in the NFL 1 time in 2004. That was with the then San Diego Chargers. His quarterback was Drew Brees. His running back was LaDainian Tomlinson. And they had a home that year wild card game, a home wild card playoff game against the Jets, featuring Chad Pennington at quarterback and Curtis Martin at running back. And at home, the Coach of the Year's team lost in overtime 20-17. Again, Drew Brees, LT, lost to Chad Pennington and Curtis Martin and company. And they missed a field goal. It was just terrible. Nate Kading missed a field goal. It was 40 yards to win the game in overtime. Both teams had multiple possessions. And that set up the Jets to go kick a walk-off chip shot field goal, 20-17. And I know I was on Cold Pizza at that point on ESPN2, and we just raked Marty Ball over the coals on Monday morning because he was the coach of the year, and they did lose at home in a wild card game. And I'm supposed to sell you this off Brian Schottenheimer. I'm sure he's a really good guy, but when you bounce around, when you have 13 jobs, he's changed jobs 13 times in 28 years. Help me out. Does that scream special? Does that scream rare? Why in 28 years, all the way to 51, has Brian Schottenheimer not been a head coach anywhere? Not college, not pro. With those kind of credentials, the son of Marty. And nobody even really gave him much of a look. He got 1 interview and lost out to Rex Ryan. That's it? That's all you got on your resume. And the only reason he was still afloat as a coach, going back 4 years ago, is because he and McCarthy are buds. They're drinking buds. They're Mexican food eating buds. They're Thursday night out buds. And he wasn't even the coordinator, but he's, once again, perfect for Jerry Jones because he obviously knows Dak. He gets along, I'm sure, great with Dak. Jerry can kind of sell the Marty pedigree a little bit. Well, he's from royalty. Well, I'm not going to go royalty when you're 5-13 in the postseason. You never played in a Super Bowl, let alone never won a Super Bowl. I can't buy royalty. I'm sorry. You're not royalty when you didn't prove to be a chip off the old block by becoming a head coach by the time you were 30 somewhere, some place along this trail. 6 teams in the first 6 years, 13 total teams in 28 years. And those 28 include the last 4 in Dallas when you basically were just Mike McCarthy's sounding board. You were hired as a consultant the first year. Then you only became the offensive coordinator because Mike took over as offensive coordinator for Kellen Moore. And Mike called all the plays. So Brian Schottenheimer has not called a single play in Dallas. He's worked closely with Dak. I'm sure Dak would sign off on him and get along with him because he's a nice guy. We've had this string of nice guys. I talked yesterday about Kellen Moore is a nice, mousy guy with a low-watt personality. I'm sure Brian has a little more personality than Kellen does, but at least Kellen's been at the controls in Dallas, with the Chargers in L.A., now with Philly in the NFC Championship game this coming Sunday. I think they're going to win it. I think they're going to go win the Super Bowl. Maybe Kellen Moore will have an Eagles Super Bowl ring. to sell as the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't love it because he's classically made to be a Jerry puppet. Brian Schottenheimer is just happy to be here in Dallas. And if at 51 he could get his first head coaching job with America's team on America's stage for America's, heck, the world's owner, the most famous owner in the history of owners, he'd jump at the chance. Yeah, I'll do whatever you say, Jerry. I'll be your puppet. It's perfect. He has no real credentials. He has no real cachet. He can't tell Jerry no. He can't tell Jerry what to do. He can't tell Jerry to back off. He'll be just very happy to be here. He and Dak will get along. Dak will love him because he's not going to cross Dak. He's not going to challenge Dak. He's not going to hold Dak accountable. I don't think he'll change anything about the football. The team, the culture, it's a country club. He will become the new director of the Dallas Cowboy Country Club that Mike McCarthy established and operated and fed pathetically as a bump on the sideline log. Is this where we're heading? It sounds like it. It sounds like something is afoot here, and it just scares me to death. Brian Schottenheimer, let's see. Do I want Brian Schottenheimer or Dan Quinn? I think I'd take Dan Quinn. Do I want Brian Schottenheimer or Deion Sanders? Do I even have to start? Do I want Brian Schottenheimer or a guy he worked for, Pete Carroll? Seriously? These are the Dallas freaking Cowboys. They can be so much better than this. Read a quote today in the Dallas Morning News that was dredged up by David Moore. I love David Moore, worked with him a long time, way back in the day, Dallas Morning News. And he pointed out that in 2014, on draft night, Jerry got talked out of Johnny Manziel. I love Johnny Manziel. John Gruden loved Johnny Manziel. I just kept saying, if Johnny's got any drug or alcohol problems, I'm out. And he did. And I was out quickly. And he was out quickly of the league because of all the above. But on draft night, everybody in the draft room wanted Zach Martin out of Notre Dame because it looked like he was just going to be a perennial All-Pro. And he has been. It's now past tense, unfortunately. And he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, so that was obviously the correct way to go. But Jerry said, let's think hard about this quarterback. And when Stephen and company, when Will McClay and everybody overruled Jerry, according to David Moore, I hadn't seen this quote before, Jerry leaned over to Stephen and said, son, if you want to do special things in life, you can't keep doing things down the middle. What we just did was down the middle. Well, obviously, no, it was, you took the high road, you took the right road, you took the Zach Martin road. But I know what Jerry's saying. You have to plunge. Jerry plunged in the oil fields and the gas fields, or he wouldn't own the Dallas Cowboys. And I get that, but Brian Schottenheimer or Kellen Moore, they're not even down the middle. They're below the middle. Seriously, when you consider the Dallas freaking Cowboys, they're below the middle. And it sounds like we're now heading toward Brian Cornelius Schottenheimer. Knock me over with a metallic blue feather